Within the Navy, sea duty is when you're attached to a ship. When they pull away from the port, you're pulling away right with them.
The best part about being on a ship, in my opinion, is that you're hitting the ground running.
Everything happens kind of fast-paced.
Sea duty is when you're out at sea showing force for the Navy. You're pulling into foreign ports. You're doing what you have to do to make sure that America's safe.
Anywhere from 3 to 5 years is a typical sea duty. A big misconception about that is that we're going to be floating around in the middle of the ocean for the 3 years you're assigned to sea duty.
Sea duty just means that you're attached to a command that does deploy. Even when attached to a ship, it doesn't mean that you're going to be stuck in the middle of the ocean waving at some seagulls. You're going to stop. You're going to enjoy the places you're at.
During sea duty, you could be attached to an aviation squadron or even stationed overseas at an expeditionary command onshore.
The cool thing about it is if you do go out on a cruise, you're going to be out there from 6 to 9 months. And once your mission's done, you come back, and then you're back for a long amount of time. Once you bring your ship back from a deployment, then there's a bunch of stuff that you have to accomplish, a lot of things that you have to get the ship prepared for next time it goes out in a year and a half or 2 years or however long it's going to be.
Sea duty can vary wildly and depend on many factors: the sailor's rate, the home port and command climate of the ship, enlisted versus officer, the list goes on and on. You've heard what the Navy wants you to know about sea duty, but what is it really like?
Dive! Dive!
Code red and 4 compartment middle level.
Torpedoes in the water!
No, I never have thought I was smart. I thought the people I dealt with were dumb, including you.
I recall zero contact with the boat before I showed up. And like you get your orders and they have a phone number in there for the boat and the sponsor coordinator, which is just the boat number. But I think I tried to call like a couple times and either the number was incorrect or they never answered the phone.
The first step of any sea duty is getting to the ship. Many times your ship will be in its home port, and when you arrive, you may first check into the squadron, which can take up to a few weeks. Then you will head to your ship or boat on the pier. If, however, your ship is deployed or underway, things are different.
Lucas, can you talk about how you get to the boat? Like if you fly, if you have to go meet the boat, talk about that.
So, okay, so we fly out to Guam, which is already like an unnerving experience because you have literally no idea what you're getting yourself into. They say just like pack a bunch of stuff into this random bag and fly out here and who knows what's going to happen. So we land, it's late at night. I don't know, it's like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And we've been given zero instructions. Like they just hand our tickets, said, go out to Guam and meet the boat. That's it. And so Bartlett and I land and we're kind of just like aimlessly moseying around in the lobby of the airport there because we have no idea who to look for or like, you know, is there going to be like a chauffeur waiting for us? Well, there actually was a chauffeur waiting for us in the name of STS-2. The only dude on the submarine.
Just make up a first name for him. I don't know what it was.
I don't know. I couldn't even make one up. But his name was for sure like Lee or something like that. The only dude on the submarine who did not speak very good English at all. He's standing there in his NSUs. And like he speaks, I'm honestly perturbed that he even made it to the boat with his amount of English because he spoke so little that he couldn't even like really clearly communicate with Bartlett and I like, hey, I'm from the Hampton, come with us. And he kind of just like hand gestures us.
Wait, so why was he there?
He was the duty driver who came and picked us up he was like sent to come pick us up, right? And so he's in the only reason we went with him is because he's a Navy guy. We're like, okay, this makes sense, I guess. We get in the duty van, and it's not just now we get in like the most ragtag, oddball bunch of dudes in there. It was an A ganger, another torpedo man. There was an LS guy in there, and it is Bartlett and I are sitting in the back seat like, what the hell is going on? Because they are talking craziness. One of them's like smoking in the duty van. They're talking about how they want to like go and stop and do all sorts of stuff out in town. And we were just like, I don't know what's going on. So they take us to the barge. No, they took us to the boat first. Because I remember it was raining and it's like 10 o'clock at night. I have my sea bag And they're like, yeah, go down on the boat. I start walking across the brow, slip and fall, bam, right on my back.
Oh shit!
Damn.
Right on my back. First time I went across the brow.
Well, you're probably
And
wearing
then-
what? Flip-flops?
Flip-flops.
Yeah.
Wet flip-flops on a wet steel brow. And I get down there like, no, you're going to go to the barge. So anyways, they took us to the barge and we slept for the night. But it was just like the most, I remember kind of like getting in bed that night and being like, oh my God, what is happening right now? And that persisted honestly for the first like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I remember so specifically the next morning, we go down there like, okay, they take us to the boat and we were sitting on crew's mess. They're like, this is breakfast. No direction. I can't even make this up. Bartlett and I sat in a booth with no food, but we were hungry. Bartlett took a whole pack of oatmeal dry and ate it.
What?
Because he didn't know what to do. Nobody told us anything. They were just all going about their day. And yeah, it was just the most absurd, like being thrust into this culture, and I had no idea what was going on.
You say that lasted 2 weeks, but to be honest, I feel like the average is probably closer to like a year and a half of what the fuck is going on right now.
That's very that's a microcosm of submarine culture. Is like they'll figure it out. I'm not gonna pay them any fucking mind.
What was the most surprising thing about when you showed up to your boat or ship for the first time?
I think I've said this before, but it's definitely duty, because no one ever tells you what a duty day is until you get to the boat. Like no one even hints that this concept exists. But you get there and you're like rushed through the process of getting your TLD because you can't stay on duty until you get a TLD. And then you're thrown into a duty section. You're like, cool, I don't know what that means. And then you just show up one day and then you're told, hey, you're going to be here for full, at a minimum, 24 hours. Like, oh, that's cool, I guess. I much prefer to go home and sleep in my own bed, but sure. Yeah, it's definitely got to be duty.
It hands down duty. I have such like a vivid memory that we had no idea this was even part of the rigmarole. It just comes as such a shock because it's not even mentioned, I don't think, once the entire time. The pipeline, prototype, the recruiters, nothing. Hands down duty.
For the uninformed, duty is when a rotating section of the crew spends at least 24 hours on the ship or boat. The sailors in the duty section are the ones responsible for standing the import watches and performing any required preventative or corrective maintenance once the rest of the crew leaves for the day. A duty rotation, or how often you must stay on duty, depends on the size of the crew, the type of the ship you're on, and your qualifications. On submarines, it's typical to have duty every 3 days, or 4 if you have a fully manned and largely qualified crew.
The thing that surprised me the most about the actual submarine was that I was picturing it like in submarine movies. I thought it was going to be like dark and cramped and wet and crowded. And it wasn't at all like that. You go down, going down an escape hatch for the first time it kind of feels like that. Like, oh, I'm in a fucking World War II vessel right now. But then you go down just a regular stairway, and then it's a big hallway with like regular fluorescent lights, and there's plenty of space. And so I thought maybe it was just like that because we were in port and they have the lights on, but yeah, it's like that all the time. No, obviously no one can see in because it's enclosed, but I was surprised at how bright and, like non-industrial it felt, at least in the forward compartment. It was homier than I was expecting, but I don't want that to come off like it was homey because it fucking wasn't. It wasn't homey.
I would say for me, the weirdest part was, and keep in mind, like I showed up to a carrier, right? So it's a big vessel, but how completely anonymous I was. Like I showed up and nobody cared. And then eventually I got walked to like Central, which is where you kind of like in port control the electric plant and stuff. The people who were like on duty didn't give a shit. that I existed, right? I'm like, hello, I'm reporting. Today's the last day. And they're like, who are you? What? No, just go sit, right? Like nobody gave a shit that I existed. And I think that introduction never fully went away throughout my entire time on board. Like the anonymity goes away, but the feeling that you don't matter kind of persists.
We went to the boat. We thought we were going to get in a ton of trouble because we had missed our flight out of San Diego to go meet the boat. No one gave a single shit except for like the guys who only knew us as the guys that missed their flight. But yeah, it's just so unorganized. Like, even if they know you're coming, which is not always the case, they don't know how to like gain you and welcome you into their midst. It's just like, here, this is where you sleep. This is where we eat. Figure it out. And you just get assigned some random person to show you around, and you hope that that person is good and wants to do it, but they might not be. We had a diver ELT, and the only thing he really wanted to show us about the submarine was the sword that he had in his rack that he had just picked up from Japan.
He's got a fucking katana.
It was a full katana, yeah.
Yeah.
But he did explicitly go, before I take you guys back to the engine room, you guys want to see something cool?
Yeah.
Did you guys get lost on the submarine your first day?
Oh, God, yeah.
I remember Jimmy took me back to Shaft Alley, like showed me the whole engine room, and we get to Shaft Alley. And then he's like, oh, I got to go. And I'm not even joking. I found my way back to TG Lubo Bay, and I was like, how do I get out of here?
Yeah.
I got taken on a tour like that first day, and I was lost within 30 seconds. And I had no idea like how I would get back to where I had just come from, which is kind of crazy because it's like pretty much a straight shot like anywhere, and you'll eventually end up in the same spot that you were. But like I was so overwhelmed at the time that I had no idea like where I was going or what I was doing.
Because I showed up in the shipyard, right? I showed up when the whole boat was already gutted. Like, there was no fucking floors anywhere. It was wooden planks. So it was just like giant open like sandbox.
That's much worse.
So I could look up and down and get disoriented. So my world wasn't like a 2 foot by 2 foot square box. It was just the entirety of whatever compartment I was in.
A 4 foot by 8 foot square box.
Yeah, that was a mind fuck.
Then I can imagine how funny it would be showing up to a submarine and it's gutted, but no one really explains what we're doing to the ship. It's just in shipyard, but you don't really know what that means. And you're like, this is fucking rickety. It's a bunch of plywood.
No, it was fucking
Guys, I can see the outside from inside.
Yeah, because there were fucking hole cuts. You literally could.
Yeah.
I forget his first name, but it was Aaron. But he was the first one who took me down. And he was like, look at this, look at that, and he's just hauling ass. And I'm just doing this. Lost as a motherfucker.
You taking notes? No.
Michael, do you get showed around the carrier?
Fuck no.
Really?
Oh my
yeah,
God.
dude. No, not by like anyone. So
talk about getting lost.
And that was like one of the parts that was so very disorienting, because I was literally like, I sat at security to get to the ship for a while, and then someone from the wrong department came to pick me up and then realized it was the wrong department, dropped me off in Central, right? That was the closest I ever got to a guided tour. And it was just some guy walking in front of me and me being like, oh, Jesus, I don't want to lose these files. Like, that was it. We did have, like, checkouts for tours of, like, parts of the engine room or, like, parts of the reactor room, right? But that was the closest we got to a tour, was, like, nuke specific. So you just kind of had to, like, sort it out. And I showed up when we were in shipyard, right? Half the ship is like cut off by temporary ducting at any one day. Most of it has lost power. There are no pumps anywhere. There's no heads that work in the whole thing, yada, yada, right? So like that environment and its ever shifting labyrinth of fucking compartments and P-ways and shit did not prepare me at all for the ship either. Like once we finally got underway, I kind of knew how to navigate the second deck,
Oh my god.
Which is the one that has like the mess deck, right? And I could get to the plant and back out. And that was like probably the first month of underway time that I existed.
When you show up to I assume any platform, when you show up to your first sea tour, actually when you show up to any command in the Navy, they give you a check-in sheet. And a check-in sheet is a list of command people, usually collateral duties, but sometimes it's just their job, that you are required to meet before you can like be released to your division to go do your job.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us on the submarine, those types of people were like the engineering department master chief, the chief of the boat, the education services officer, the qualification petty officer, all the way up through the XO and CO. You get like the command fitness leader. Every person that has a vital role or could have a vital role in your career, you're supposed to meet before you're allowed to do anything else. But I still have my approximately three quarters completed check-in sheet. I had never officially met the EDMC where I was supposed to like agree to follow all the rules that I never agreed to follow. Yeah. And I believe the XO or maybe the CO, I didn't meet one of them. So that's how seriously at least our command at the time took that check-in sheet.
Very similarly, like I got one of those check-in sheets.
Oh, I can't imagine.
At that point, it's more like departments. So like there are people that have an actual reason that you have to check in with them, like personnel, right? Medical or whatever. And then other than that, it was more just like, this is where this department is. Ta-da, right? But you had to have someone from them sign it. But yeah, you just like show up and you have this sheet with like all these places and who even knows what deck this thing is on, right? You no clue. So you would just be chilling and then they're like, hey, everyone who hasn't gone to like line up, right? And then you would just kind of get led blindly and then they would drop you off and you'd be lost. And that was it.
The process of checking into a seagoing command has historically been a gigantic pain point for the Navy. So much so that there have been at least 2 different versions made of a fictional video featuring a sailor going to captain's mast and kicked out of the Navy. This happens due to a series of events kicked off by his chain of command's failure to properly check him in, and ending with him being caught underage drinking. One in 2000 and one about a decade ago. See if you can spot the similarities between what the Navy specifically says not to do and our experiences.
Stephen Tyler, you are suspected of committing the following violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Failure to obey an order or regulation. Did on or about 6 February fail to obey the same by drinking under the age of 21 and 45 days extra duty. Further, I'm going to direct the executive officer to begin proceedings for an administrative separation from the Naval Service for you. You are dismissed.
An unauthorized absence on June 24th, 25th, and 26th.
This sailor once had a promising career ahead of him.
And I will direct the executive officer to begin processing Seaman Berger for administrative separation from the Navy.
A little kid waiting for Christmas, you know? I can't wait to get it all set and ready to just air daily, but what's the one for Chevy is, I'm pretty
request permission to come aboard.
I'm gonna put some paint on. Reporting aboard?
Yes, sir. I have my orders here to report to the USS Higgins.
Tyler, do you have to check in today? I mean...
Well, that's the report date on my orders.
Well, it's too bad you had to check in today. I mean, there's nobody here. It's Sunday.
Wish to come aboard? I'm gonna check in.
You serious? It's Sunday.
It says no later, 5th May.
Hold on a second. Let me call the CDO. Yeah, CDO, this is OOD.
Yeah, what is it?
I have a new sailor checking aboard.
For crying out loud, it's Sunday.
Yes, that's what I told him.
Well, stow him somewhere.
Yes, sir. I'll take care of it.
Well, man, over there's your rack. Just you sleep there for the night. Must read the division in the morning.
Okay. Hey, thanks, man.
Yep, no problem.
How's it going? All right, I guess. You just come aboard? Yeah, just today.
Too bad for you, man.
What do you mean?
We're shipping the Navy from the captain on down. Giving us all the crappy jobs nobody else wants.
What are you doing here on a Sunday? The guy that brought me down here said everybody had liberty except the watch.
I'm on restriction. I really don't know my way around yet, and kind of hungry. You wouldn't be able to bring me to the galley, would you?
You're kidding, right? The galley closed about 2 hours ago. But I tell you what, take you up to the gear dump, get you some candy.
That'd be great.
Why? Because when you least expect it, when you drop your guard for that one moment, that's when something happens.
Who are you?
Seaman Tyler reporting for duty, Chief.
Why doesn't anyone tell me anything?
When'd you check in? Yesterday afternoon, Chief. Would you have your orders with you? I had them yesterday. I don't know what happened. I know you lost it, because I have it right here. Here's your orders. Don't lose them, you understand? Yes, Chief. You get your Iraq already? Yes, they got me with combat systems berthing. That doesn't even matter, all right? Okay, are you married? No, Chief. Well, it's one less thing I gotta worry about. That's good. Head out to Alucard. I need you to start him getting checked in. All right, Chief.
Get him checked in.
Chief, we got the CASREP parts for the radar in, and I need to get those in today.
Johnson, you do it.
Okay, Chief. Hey, buddy. What's your name? Greg Tyler. Come on, I'll show you around. So now you know where the galley is.
Hey, Alucard. Hey, Chief needs you to meet him down in supply.
But he has me checking in this guy.
Whoa, don't shoot the messenger.
Can you check him in?
No, I have stuff to do.
Like what?
Look, I got too much to do to babysit this guy. Can it wait?
Chief wants him checked in, and I have to go down to the supply room.
All right, then. What's he have to do?
Everything.
Man. All right, come on, let's go.
Pardon me, sir. We having a check-in today? Seaman
Burger, sir. Sure, have your orders around here somewhere. I'll get to that when I get to it, so I'll talk to you then.
See you around, Taylor. It's Tyler.
Come on. If he's not worried about getting you checked in.
Neither am I. So go find Alucard.
Where is he?
Maybe supply.
Unfortunately for Tyler and the Navy, he's on a course from which he will not recover.
Think about Seaman Berger's first impressions of his new ship. What kind of image does it project that his chain of command was not prepared to welcome him aboard?
Within 72 hours, if we don't do our jobs, their eagerness can turn to disappointment. Disappointment leads to apathy, and apathy is a poison that kills discipline and drive, and without these, they can't be good sailors. Keep in mind that our recruiting ads can create false expectations in young sailors. They typically experience culture shock when they're faced with the realities of food service duty, compartment cleaning, and working parties.
New sailors, once finished checking into their boat, sometimes still don't get to report to their division to do the work that they were trained for. Depending on the ship's operational status and schedule, and their manning levels, they may be assigned to a sparkle team, or to work for the cooks as a food service attendant, or crank. On aircraft carriers, nuclear-trained sailors typically don't crank, and on submarines they're supposed to crank for less time than their non-nuclear counterparts. This is because the timeline for qualification starts immediately, whether you are part of your division or not.
What was it like being a junior person on your first sea tour?
Also overwhelming just in the sheer number of quals that you get. Because at Prototype, you get one book, and that has everything that you're going to need to do in 6 months. The boat, you get probably about 10 individual qual cards when I got there, and now it's probably these guys are getting maybe like 15. Like, we'll spread them out, but so many more things are tracked in like our qual tracker program these days than it was when I got there initially. And so but even that was overwhelming at the time.
Most guys show up and it's either sparkle team or cranking. And so you show up, you're like, or both. You're like, I'm going to go do my job in the engine room. They're like, or for the next 90 days, you're going to go be with some of the most retarded people on the entire sub. Like, some of the cooks are super nice, but like, man, just you know,
They're not
anyways.
nukes for sure. They're not.
They're not nukes for sure. Simple
Yeah.
folk. But we had some really nice ones. But you're like, it's kind of almost degrading in a little bit of a way, because you just spent 2 years like busting your back, getting this nuclear training all done, and then you're literally washing dishes, smashing trash, shooting trash into the bottom of the ocean. But yeah, that surprised me big time. I didn't have to do it for a while, but a lot of guys do it like immediately.
It's also like handling the slop. So here's a fun submarine, little fun submarine trivia. When you are done eating, but you haven't eaten all your food, that food doesn't go in the trash can, because the stuff that goes in the trash can is stuff that we aren't going to dump into the bottom of the ocean. We're going to store it in the people spaces back in the engine room to just get nice and filled with methane and just reek and leak. So we keep that where we work. But the food scraps don't go in those bags. The food scraps go into a Home Depot bucket next to that trash can. And it's the responsibility of the cranks to handle the slop. Lucas, what do you do with the slop?
You take it down to the 21-man head and pour it down the toilet.
And you flush that shit right down.
Blow it out the side.
Then on days when we have like chicken bones or anything like that, it ends up in the strainer down by the drain pump, and you see the egg hangers taking apart the strainer, pulling out chicken bones and all sorts of stuff.
It is called an FSA, a food service attendant.
Yeah.
But the term cranking that I can find, the only etymology I can find for the term, is like in old Navy time, they called anyone that worked in the mess or galley crankers, because they're constantly having to crank out food quickly as like in the term of endearment.
Oh, really? Wow, that took a turn.
It became not a term of endearment for us.
You're not even allowed to say it anymore, I think.
Yeah. It's considered another hazing term.
I think you're supposed to not call them cranks. You're supposed to call them FSAs. Yeah.
Yeah, but
so
one of the
FSAs are also like your waiter. So it's self-service food, except drinks. You order the crank what you want to drink, and they.
Oh, that's fucking weird.
Every meal on a sub, you have two cranks. One is constantly dish boy, and the other one is constantly drink boy.
And the drink boy calls the line too.
Oh,
yeah, drink boy will tell the line to move up because everyone's in a queue.
When you're a junior person before you're qualified, and you have to be constantly working towards the goal of being fully qualified in quals or your warfare device, for us, submarine warfare. So if you have any idle time, you are supposed to be, right? It's this like funny sort of understanding that nobody really expects you to do it for 16 hours a day. But if you're not doing it, they're going to expect you to do it. So if you have any idle time, you're supposed to be not watching movies, not having ice cream or any dessert or whatever. And you always have to have your notes with you in line, whatever. So if you didn't have your notes with you, that was a prime opportunity for someone to steal a little bit of happiness from you in whatever manner they saw fit. And they probably had some pretty good ideas on how to accomplish that. Well, the two best ones I saw were when we were on Ice X. The bilge would fill up with like 12 inches of water and freeze over pretty quickly. I can't remember whose notes they were, but I remember it was his idea. He got the notes, found a Ziploc bag, and waterproofed them, submerged them in the ice, and let them freeze over. So whoever's notes they were buried in about 12 inches of ice, and they had to go get the steam Jenny out and blast the whole bilge out before they could get their notes out. Meanwhile, they're being asked the whole time,
Hang on.
where's your notes?
The steam Jenny is a hot water pressure washer.
Oh,
not
yeah,
a fucking steam
It's just a press washer.
Yeah.
We call it the steam Jenny.
The steam Jenny. Side note about the steam Jenny. I remember in shipyard, ours was broken because people would leave it at max heat and turn it off, and it would break. Well, we were moving back onto the boat, and it was broken. And I was like, well, why do we have this on here? Let's just throw it away. So I took it upon myself to haul that thing up and chuck it in the dumpster. And then
I thought you were going to say ocean, dude.
No. Chucked it in the dumpster. And then I don't remember how it came up. We're like, hey, we need a new one. And they were like $20,000.
Oh, my God.
And Captain Theron had an absolute conniption.
Dude, the point of saying first names is so that you don't say the last name.
Why? For protecting his
Yeah.
freaking...
Okay. Aaron and Theron have not agreed to be on here, so.
Oh, I see. Well, bleep that out.
I will.
Yeah.
I will. It's fine.
He had an absolute conniption that I threw it away.
Oh, you told him?
He asked who threw. I was at a long table during some like Orse thing, and it just happened to come up. He's like, "Yeah, and who threw away the Steam Jenny?" And I was like, "Oh, that was me." And he flipped out because it was like $20,000. And I was like, "It was broken, dude. What did you want me to do with it?"
You show up to your vessel, whatever, before you're actually useful to your division. Especially if you're underway, you're going to be cleaning because everybody else is working, doing something, either standing watch, or if you're senior, you're just not doing anything because you have that leisure. So you are cleaning, painting, repainting, scraping paint, prepping to paint, vacuuming and then cleaning a bilge over and over and over for the duration of the underway.
For 8 hours.
For 8 hours. And it's not, if they would just do it for cleanliness, it would be so much more efficient, but it's cleaning for time.
I was going to say you should talk about what the cleaning actually is, because it's not just like mopping a floor, I assume.
There's 0 mopping of floors.
It's 0 moppings. The cleaning would consist of pulling up all of the decking that you would walk on normally and climbing down into the bilge and sucking up any water that was down there, and then hand cleaning with the most EPA like violating cleaning sprays and solutions, and chem wipes.
Simple green concentrate in spray bottles.
Yeah, none of it's ever watered down.
Never
It's like every time you spray it, your eyes get kind of watery.
It's almost simple black is how dark it is.
The back of your throat burns just a little, you know, but you're like, that's a good burn. That's where my tonsils are.
That's how I know I'm alive. And then you
Also,
just clean.
None
Go ahead
of
and cut me
none
off
of the
again.
stuff
Go
is
ahead.
stored. I was trying to do it while you were being quiet.
I was in the middle of a sentence. Go ahead.
I was gonna say none of the stuff is stored like easily accessible. If you run out of chem wipes, it's like, oh yeah, it's up 18 feet in the air behind 3 hot pipes. Go up there and just like grab like a handful and bring them back down.
Donkey Kong your ass back down here.
Yeah. Yeah, no one they'll point where they are, but no one will tell you that every pipe around it's hot as fuck. So you go to use them as your monkey bars. Oh fuck! Like no warning, and they're like, "Nah, you're good." So yeah, you clean and you clean and you clean, and you go from bay to bay. Each 8-hour shift is like, we're going to clean this bay, and then the next shift you're cleaning another bay. But
yeah, so imagine you have 8 hours to clean 150 square feet of space.
Yeah.
But not you. You and a team of people spend 8 hours cleaning like 150 square feet of submarine all day. That's what you do.
So
you lose your goddamn mind.
Yeah, so for Amber and anyone not military related, those Sparkle team groups is like having 5 or 6 people deep clean for 8 hours, not for cleanliness, but for time, deep clean a bedroom.
You guys done cleaning? Yes, 6 hours ago.
Yeah. So after you actually clean it, you will usually take shifts of who will hide in the space to be unseen and take a little rest while everyone else is up. So if someone goes to come by, you'll get a little kick in the foot, or like, hey dude, like, you know. But I remember being told one of the best tips ever for a field day, and naturally it was a Jimmy, the ultimate skater, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. And he was like, if you can crawl out to the hardest to reach place, whether they can see you or not, he was like, as long as you can repeat back when they say who's out there, no one will ever question what you're doing. So all you have to do is be able to call back when someone says, "Who's that?" He's like, or get into a position where they can just see your feet.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, he's really in there."
Yeah.
like I'm doing nothing but this.
Right.
Yeah, all those hours of shooting the shit, having a good time, bonding with the dudes that you show up with, creating games out of necessity for sanity, taking a wire brush and just until your eyes cross, and then you kind of forget that you've been doing it for so long on just something while you're talking to somebody. Yeah, that's the first thing that I've always kept in my brain about going to a boat.
You're not allowed to feel happiness when you're new to the boat before you qualify. At least qualify to be able to support a watch bill, but really qualify submarines. And what I mean by happiness is like in our generation, that meant no eating dessert, no like coking and joking with your friends, no watching movies in public. Pretty much if you were in a public space and you weren't like actively engaged in a checkout or some practical factor, you had to at least pretend to be studying. And no one cared if you were just pretending, but you did have to be pretending to study.
When I showed up, if you were not qualified fish, you like were aggressively attacked if you even thought about touching dessert, like verbally. You fucking nub, like what the fuck are you eating that dessert for? Like, did you stand 8 hours a watch? Like, what about this guy who did stand 8 hours a watch? But we all pay the same amount for food. So, and at the time, like I didn't even think anything of it. I'm just like, all right, okay, that's how this is, and like, all right, now I have something to work for. Like, I would like to have dessert, so let me get my fish so I can. And so that's how it was like nicely explained to me. But at the end of the day, that was fucked up. Like, if you're paying for food, like you don't pay for just some of it. You're paying for any food that is offered, and like you should be able to get it. So that is 0% a thing in our boat at the very, very least. And if I ever hear anyone saying like, "Hey, you're a non-qual, like you can't have dessert," I will shut that shit down immediately. And I was like, when I qualified fish and I was on first boat, like I was one of the staunchest defenders of like non-quals don't eat dessert, because that's just what I knew.
And what's even funnier as a crank and you're junior, so this kind of goes back to how we said you can't have dessert, is watching, I don't know how to tell him without his last name, but John, old Putnam,
yeah,
wolfing as fast as he can dessert
Pudding.
down. So his leftover dessert, and he was like, I can't throw this away. And he would just eat it.
Oh, as a crank?
As a crank.
So here's the thing. I was gonna bring this story up because I watched it happen too many times for it to sit well with me, and I called him out on it multiple times. And I would watch him take fucking pudding that had been sitting out for over an hour and spoon it in his mouth, but not with a spoon, with a goddamned ladle that came in the container, and he was trying to shovel it into his mouth with the ladle.
Oh my god, dude.
Dude, he would do it with almost any food.
He
Dessert
would
was
lap it
his
up too.
Yeah, dessert was his like specialty, but he felt bad about throwing food away. Remember those big Sunkist tuna bags?
Dude, there was no brand associated with that tuna. Get out of here.
I watched him raw dog an entire bag of that because he didn't want to throw it away.
Oh my god. The era of submariner right before ours, like the new guys that showed up between a year and 3 years before us, in their generation, when you were cranking, you were being hazed, like literally hazed, not like high school football hazing, but like drinks poured on your head. Like you can't think of how you could haze someone that's dealing with food, and you got hazed that way while you were cranking. That was like the worst of the times to be a junior person, is while you were cranking.
Well, it happened to me, so I could do it to them, and it's gonna be cool and funny. But it's like then you end up with some fucking Gomer Pyle situation where some dude just doesn't take it well.
Is there any like traditional nub bashing on carriers?
There's a lot of nub bashing in reactor. I think overall it's been squashed a lot more as I was getting out, especially it clamped down. A lot of traditions about like shellbacks and everything changed.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the hazing has been sort of removed from the surface fleet until you get deep into the bowels of reactor department, like within the division itself is where it's at. And I think that is a unique pipeline that results in a unique culture that might contribute to that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
When did you become senior? Was there a signifying event? And one way your life got better and one way your life got worse?
I felt senior when I got my fish, and I actually got pinned the same day as Kenny and Clay, and the three of us were also our division LPOs at the time. And I think that's about when I felt senior, not having to get in line to eat with a fucking notebook that I have to arbitrarily hold open to look like I'm studying for something that I'm fucking not going to, because I'm waiting to eat food, or not being able to like put in fucking headphones and shit at certain times. It's just the creature comforts once you get past your subquals, at least on submarines.
Did anything get worse?
The only thing that could get worse is responsibility, and if you were stupid, it would obviously get worse because you're now trusted and responsible to do these things. But no, I don't think it got a little better, but I wouldn't say it got any worse in any other scenario, because I was already at that point. By the time I got my fish, I was already the division LPO and had all that stuff. So
he was the AQAO, the AXO, the ACO, the ACFL.
For me, I became senior when I qualified shutdown reactor operator, which was my senior in rate watch, because I qualified shutdown reactor operator before I got my submarine qualification, which is abnormal. But I progressed through my nuke quals very quickly. And when you're a shutdown reactor operator, you're in charge of at least half of the ship in port. And so no one really cares that you don't have your fish. And my life didn't really get that much better until I got my fish, I would say. Like, you're still constantly stressing about that one qualification and that board you have to stand until it's finally over. But I mean, it's like a whole new life that you live underway when you're fully qualified. And I was never even a person that like hung out on cruise mess or watched movies with everybody, but just being able to like chill out and do whatever you want whenever you want, it makes a sea tour actually fun. But that time is so limited because it takes so long to get through all of your quals as a nuke. It's like 2.5 years of pain by the time you're qualified senior in rate and done with your even more senior qualifications, and like 1 year of, oh, I get to have fun and I'm knowledgeable enough to fuck around and not get in trouble and all that other stuff. But yeah, once you fully qualify, it's an entirely different existence on the boat.
Quals on the surface world do work completely differently. You are kind of forbidden from starting your surface warfare until you are senior in rate officially.
Oh shit. Damn.
Yeah, you're like, you can't touch it. If you have a book and it has signatures, someone will take it away, was my experience, because they want you to focus on the things that fill the watch bill.
God damn. That is the opposite. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like totally different. It's so weird. One thing, so like as a surface electrician specifically, you kind of have different levels of senior in rate in a way that is different than most people. Like for most people, it's just, this is your senior in rate, right? As an electrician, you have like, well, I've qualified the senior roving watch. I've filled the most important parts of all of the watch bill. And most people would agree, for my rate, I am senior. Then there's like the nuclear Navy says for your NEC, SRO is your senior. You will probably not be allowed to stand this when it matters, right? But you do have to speak to the captain. And so that's like different. And then there's like load dispatcher on top of that, which is not officially part of your qual path. But on a lot of ships, that is actually senior in rate. And you will not be treated as such until then. And then also, by the way, you have like that, what is it, like 2.5 years or whatever to get your surface warfare qual. So like there's like different levels of senior in rate in the surface world, and it's definitely really weird. I know I felt senior in rate, I would say the first time after qualifying with the captain, like VCO on the carrier, like that was a big deal, and it felt really scary because we've already gone through the RO, and the reactor officer is at least an 06.
That's
so
fucking
like
wild.
Yeah, so like you've already done it. You've already done the scary board.
Yeah.
And then you still have to talk to the CO. And I remember like after that, I felt like, dang, I'm qualified. And then everyone reminded me, no, you're not. And so I kept working on it.
Is hazing not existing a good or a bad thing?
I personally liked the amount that we got. I feel like if they could like capture the amount that happened during RC time and cap it there, but not make it any less, like it's fair game.
So Lucas is referring to camaraderie building, bullying, which is, I mean,
that is what hazing is supposed to be.
That's what hazing is supposed to be. Hazing ends up getting the negative connotation when there's a lot of ill will involved. And a lot of the hazing that we experienced in our time there was not any,
It was like
there's no
brotherly.
ill will behind it. It was, like big brother, little brother type of thing where you leave your notebook out. So we're going to drill through it and put a lock in it, and you're not going to have the key. So now you've got to walk around with a book with a lock through it. Or you leave your water bottle out. So we're going to rig a Rube Goldberg machine so that you can identify the location of it in some given time. But things like that you can look back on and laugh and go, dude, that was so funny in hindsight. But a lot of the older generational hazing that everyone thinks of where dudes would get pulled out of their racks and beat up, or dudes would get the soap in a sock and then everyone just go gangs up on a new dude. That's fucking assault. So that's assault, brother. But yeah, there's a place for it. There is a line. I'm okay with the brotherly hazing. I'm not okay with ill intent or like borderline assault stuff.
Do you think it's a net positive that it's gone away, or a net negative?
I think it's a net positive that some of the old stuff has been very hammered on to stop, and allowing some of the current form of hazing where you're not going to beat the shit out of a dude, you'll just jab and poke fun of people either verbally or not physically harm somebody. It's the same way, like, I don't know. I didn't have siblings, but the whole sibling, the brother, older brother, younger brother is the only way I can think about it. Where it's good when you're building trust and you're building a relationship with junior sailor and a senior sailor. Past that, I don't really see it benefiting, but I do see a benefit from just the camaraderie. That way it gets you out of the monotony of the day-to-day underway.
Like once the hatches close, like the entertainment is each other. So like fucking with people might seem fucked up, but also like you're just trying to entertain yourself as someone who's like fully qualified. Like your day is a lot of monotony and you're just trying to like get a rise out of someone for something stupid.
If you'd have gotten caught doing something to someone else's stuff, would you have gotten in trouble?
Caught by who?
Like someone very senior.
I feel like officers were typically less cool with it. But like if the chief of the boat caught you drill pressing somebody's notebook, he'd probably be like, "You need a lock?" Like,
Yeah.
fuck him, dude. Fuck him up.
Okay.
Yeah, he leaves books out.
Yeah,
like
he would
And
know.
so like now that wouldn't happen.
I am under the presumption, based on the conversations I've had with Matt and Danny and some of the other guys we know that are still in, that all that stuff is gone. There is no even like big brother, little brother, like in fun time hazing. Like all that stuff is very looked down on now. And like Matt and I talked about last time we recorded, the dessert thing is like, yeah, you can't tell someone they can't eat dessert. Like you can't, you will be in trouble if you tell them that. And for us, that was just like the way we existed, was like, yeah, what the fuck? You put that shit back. You don't fucking touch that.
Yeah.
That was the baseline.
Yeah.
Like most of that shit was, maybe it's because I showed up when I did, but most of that shit was kind of going to the wayside in 2016 when I got to the boat.
Well,
you know?
Joe, so when you guys had junior guys for like deployment, was it no movies?
It depended. If you were doing good, if you were ahead, nobody gave a shit. And I'm trying to remember, I can't remember if anybody off the top of my head who, like, at least during deployment, was doing bad in quals. But because I think the mentality was starting to shift towards the, hey, you will be rewarded for like doing well, you know, so you can watch movies.
But I think the point is that it shifted to beyond that. Just you will only be punished if you're doing poorly. Otherwise, just feel free to exist how you want.
Yeah. Well, I've always been of the opinion, because you pay for the food because they take your BAS.
Yeah.
So that whole food and shit should never be a thing, because you're literally being denied shit that you pay for.
Yeah, that's what your generation all thought.
No, I would say it would be a net negative for me, because that horseplay and goofing around is what keeps you sane and is part of the like enjoyment of being in such a unique community.
I'm going to play the middle here, because this for me is a very difficult subject, because it seems like, and I don't have like data to back this up, but it seems like when we were in, and the people immediately before us were in, like obviously at that time, mental health still kind of had the stigma of like, don't talk about it, just grit your teeth and get through it. Yes, you're being hazed. We got hazed worse than you, so suck it up. And that just kind of trickled down. And at the same time, it felt like there was less mental health issues, but I'm obviously not naive enough to know that could just be a fact of like, no one talked about it. But it seems like the Navy has this issue that they keep coming back to, which is like, the people that we're getting in the Navy now are soft. Like that's what they keep saying. And that's what brings on programs like Warrior Toughness and all these safety stand-downs that are happening, and constant mental health struggles and suicide. And that is in an environment and within these subcultures where they aren't being hazed. And it's like relatively easier of an existence, especially at the beginning, than it was when we were going through it. And yet I would say at best, nothing has changed on the mental health side. And so from that perspective, I would argue that things are worse. Like it takes away from the brotherhood and the camaraderie, and like you're less like hardened as a submariner, which I think as a human is worse for you, but as a submariner, it's better for you. And all that stuff is for the most part gone, at least as far as we know. And I don't think that it had the benefit from the mental health standpoint that was the idea. Like, hey, let's stop hazing these guys so that they have less mental health problems. I don't think that worked. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I very much am in the same ballpark as Kenny in this, and I feel like a lot they're right horse, wrong barn, trying to identify where the mental health issues, what the cause is.
Yeah.
And they will not acknowledge the living conditions.
Right.
They will not acknowledge the quality of life, but they will hammer and say, you guys can't do this stuff.
I feel like, okay, so I exited the Navy in 2018. I got to my ship in early 2015, left at the very, very end of 2018, right? And I feel like even in that time frame, I saw quite a bit of change regarding this topic. I remember when we had a shellback ceremony on my last deployment, one junior sailor had heard stories of how it had been previously, and after standing at attention, waiting around for a while, literally said, "So do we just haze ourselves?" Like he was, like he was like literally confused. So I mean, I definitely have seen the change. I think it is real. As far as whether or not it is a net positive or negative, I don't think that you should ever like. I don't think there's ever a genuine excuse for disrespecting someone personally. Like there's never going to be a good outcome from that. There's no training or learning experience that comes from being disrespected as an individual, right? But there was a lot of things that were genuinely just like fun, like goofy between both people. Both sides were having a good time. Like there were like games that we would play to entertain ourselves, and those have been lost too. And not really any of those were personally disrespectful. There was no one who was ever like upset about it. There were just a lot of like silliness. Like people would have like their boots stolen and you'd go like run all the way down like to the very, very bottom of the engine room and like tuck their boots behind something. And now like what are they gonna fucking do about it? Right? Like they're just like trapped.
Yeah.
And they weren't like mad. They didn't feel personally slighted by that. But today that would not fly ever.
Yeah.
So I think that we have probably crossed the boundary. And I think that unfortunately it's just not a very easy one to keep clearly defined.
Agreed.
It's hard to like compare like our time to this time because the people in this time will never know what it was like in our time, and you'll only see like what the changes are like in your time frame on the boat until you have been on a like different boats for a long time. Like you're not gonna, as a junior guy, you're never gonna like appreciate like what I went through, and that like what you're going through is significantly easier and less like demeaning than what I went through. But that is what is driving like people to continually try and get better, is that like what I went through was worse, but I want you to go through something not as bad. And you're going to possibly be the senior person one day, and you're going to want people to not be going through something quite as bad, which as long as the standard doesn't drop and we're just trying to be people that are trying to encourage people to get better every day and doing it in a way that is not demeaning, then that's good. And that's what I think has changed the most between when I was on Hampton and coming back as a sea returnee to the Alex, is that people are wanting you to be better and not compromising the standard. And that I think is a good thing.
Like and subscribe.